Hi, my name is Judy Orton Grissett, and I am presenting the research that my colleague Dr. Feng-Ru Xu and I did. The title of our project is Open Pedagogical Practices and Instructional Changes in a Psychology Course. So to introduce ourselves, I'll be recording the presentation, but Dr. Feng-Ru Xu is my co-presenter and really the mastermind behind this project. She's an instructional designer and librarian at Kent State University. And this is me. I'm the director of experiential learning at Georgia Southwestern State University. I should give just a quick backstory that Feng-Ru and I met at OpenEd in 2015 and have been collaborating on projects ever since. So the project that we're presenting today is on open pedagogy, and just a quick point about it. Open pedagogy is pedagogical practice which allows more student-centered instruction. And it does so by getting students more engaged by creating real-world products. And some examples include wiki projects, whole or partial ebooks, video materials, supplements, and the creation of quiz questions. And the idea is to engage students in a meaningful project, something that is contributing back to the course, contributing to the field, something that they feel invested in, rather than disposable assignments. So that was the inspiration of our project. So this project, it was a research project that we did, and back in 2019, I was teaching human growth and development, and we decided to implement a series of projects similar to what we had done in previous semesters. And what we were doing is we were having students create quiz questions. And the quiz questions were multiple choice questions in lieu of doing a paper. So the semester that we implemented this project, we had students do 5 homework assignments. For the first homework assignment, students wrote a paper. It was a reflection paper. That was one that I typically had my students write. For the second homework, students created quiz questions, and for that they created 3 quiz questions, and again, those were multiple choice quiz questions. And then for homework 3 through 5, students had a choice between writing the paper and creating the quiz questions. And not only creating the quiz questions, but also reviewing a partner's quiz questions. So again, students created these 3 quiz questions, all multiple choice, through Google Forms. And so they created their questions, STEM, and then their options within Google Forms. And we provided instructions to students on how they should create those questions and what a good question looked like. We discussed, in terms of content, and also not including options such as all of the above or none of the above. So students had guidance on how to create those questions. After they created their questions, we paired students with a peer, and they reviewed their peers' questions anonymously. And they also reviewed, in that mix of questions, a 4th question. And the 4th question was the instructor's question. So students didn't know the questions that they were reviewing, which one was the instructor question. And they conducted their review through Qualtrics, through an online rubric. And this is what that rubric looked like. So students gauged the questions based on the relevance, the clarity of the question, their level of difficulty, and if the choice of answers was appropriate. And they could also say whether they recommended to use the question for an upcoming exam, because we did use some of the questions for upcoming exams. And then they could give comments and suggestions for improving the question. So by doing so, doing this project, our goal was for our students to think about the material, review the material, particularly prior to an exam that might be coming up. So it was a way for them to think about it in a different way than maybe traditionally that they would for a paper. And again, this project was a more streamlined version of what we had done before, because before we had used Word documents. They were electronic Word documents that students would fill out, and it became a little cumbersome when it came time to review those documents and for them to conduct their peer review. So we streamlined it using Google Forms. And not only are the students reviewing their peers' questions, the instructor, which in this case would be myself, looking over the questions. I'm going to be doing some more in-depth analysis of these questions. But for now, looking over the questions, what we're seeing is that a lot of the questions are on the lower end of Bloom's taxonomy. So we saw a lot of questions that were describing something or helping someone remember a concept, remember, a definition of a concept or a definition of something that was covered in the course. So moving ahead, we would like to tell students more about Bloom's taxonomy and how questions can be created at different levels of Bloom's taxonomy, and how we can kind of push students to think a little bit higher, a little more deeply about these concepts. So having them maybe write more example questions where they can apply a concept to an example. And something else that we saw were a ceiling effect for a number of students' ratings. And so that meaning that students might take the rubric and just put all 5s for all of the questions on the rubric and not offer any suggestions. So we did see that some going through the questions. And so moving ahead, we'll be thinking of ways to maybe combat that ceiling effect. After students were doing their, or not necessarily after all of the assignments, but after they would complete each assignment, we had students take a survey. So after students had completed homework 2, which was the question creation assignment and review assignment, we ask students then to compare the paper assignment, which they did for their first homework, with the second homework, which was create and review the quiz questions. And then we asked them which would they prefer if they had a choice. And of the 35 students who did complete the survey, we found that nearly half liked the question creation and review assignment much better than the paper assignment. And we saw that over 88% preferred the question creation and review assignment over the paper assignment. They seemed to like the assignment. After homework 3, which was when they had a choice between the paper and quiz question creation and review, we asked them, which assignment did you choose and why did you choose that assignment? So the vast majority chose the quiz creation and review assignment. So 30 of 33 students who filled out the survey. And when we asked them why, several students said that cited time demand, meaning it didn't take as much time. They were able to do a better review of the material, and also they enjoyed the process of reading other people's questions. At the very end of the course, we did a third survey and we asked a number of questions. I'm just pulling out some highlights here. Here we see that students felt like the mental effort was about what they expected for the question creation assignment. For the question about the time effort, we see it weighted a little more heavily to the left, and they thought that it took less time than they were expecting. We did see that students, when they were asked would they like to do strictly paper, strictly question creation and review, or combination of both, we saw overwhelmingly that students wanted to do a combination of both. And we saw that students were leaning more so towards doing maybe one paper with 4 question creation and review assignments. So they still wanted more of the question and review assignments. So in the moving ahead, we will be doing some more in-depth qualitative analyses on the student open-ended responses, and also looking more closely at the questions they created. So some final thoughts. Dr. Hsu and I feel like this project increases student motivation. Students feel invested in what they're doing. We also noticed that, or we have thought that faculty must be invested in order to do such an assignment like this. So it's not a one fits all. And also, this could be part of an in-class quiz with questions that are created so students can see what other students are creating their quiz questions, and it can be kind of a fun assignment. So thank you so much for listening, and we look forward to hearing or seeing your questions and comments. Thank you.